Well, it's Friday night again, and that means it's Atheist Bible Study night time. So, in this episode of reading through the Gospel of Mark, what we're going to be doing is we're going to finally finish up the first chapter of Mark. Yeah, after 3 weeks of reading it. In this episode, what I'd like to do is I'd like to highlight the healings of Jesus. Okay, now, so far, Jesus in the Gospel of Mark has been portrayed as doing two different kinds of miracles. The first kind of miracle is exorcisms, casting out demons, right? And we've seen this relates to his apocalyptic mindset, right? When he's casting out a demon, what he's doing is he's removing the control that the devil has over the world in preparation for introducing the kingdom of God. And we'll see that the healings that are described in Mark are similarly symbolic and are used to a similar end. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to focus in on one particular episode of healing that's recorded in the Gospel of Mark. So let's just go ahead and read that through right now. If you'll join me over at the chalkboard. And a leper came to him, beseeching him, and kneeling and said unto him, If you will, you can make me clean. Moved with anger, he stretched out his hand and touched him, and said to him, I will, be clean. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was made clean. And he sternly charged him, and sent him away at once, and said to him, See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded for a proof to the people. But he went out and began to talk freely about it, and to spread the news, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter a town, but was out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Bible, let me just briefly rehearse what this leprosy business is. Leprosy was kind of a generic term for disfiguring skin diseases. It could be psoriasis, it could be bacterial infections, it could be something like this. Anything that would make your skin, you have lesions on your skin. And the evangelical Christian's favorite book of the Bible, the book of Leviticus, has an extensive list of rules and regulations as to what should happen to you should you get skin diseases of this kind. And basically what it is if you get a skin disease like this, you're supposed to go to the priest, all right, and the priest will make a diagnosis of you. If you have just a minor skin disease that goes away in a couple days, then that's okay. But if you have full-blown leprosy, forget it. Nobody's supposed to touch you. You are unclean. In fact, you are supposed to go around shouting everywhere you go, unclean, unclean, so everybody knows to stay away from you and not to touch you. If you've seen the movie The Motorcycle Diaries, where Ch, everybody's favorite leftist poster child now, Ch goes out and visits a leper colony in South America. And it's very significant that he does what Jesus Christ did here. Okay, he actually reaches out and he touches the leper. The book of Leviticus absolutely prohibits you from touching lepers. If you do, you also are unclean and are excluded as well. So it's very significant here that what Jesus is doing, touching the leper. So keep your eye on that. We'll talk more about that later. And in this passage, Jesus talks about, okay, you're cleansed from leprosy here. Go talk to the priest. Well, why is this? Well, the thought behind it is if you get one of these diseases that's just so horrible, like leprosy, all right, you had it coming, okay? The reason you got this disease is because you did some horrible, sinful thing. And therefore, if the disease has gone away, that means God has forgiven you of your sin. You should go to the temple, give an offering, kind of validate that you're back in the clear again, with God and with your fellow men. So Jesus tells this leper to go and fulfill that thing. Okay, now, there's several aspects of this story. It's a very short little story, but it's packed with symbolism. The way that Mark, packs so much meaning into just so few words really has to be commented upon. And I think the best way to do it is to compare this story with how this story is told in another gospel, right? Now, this episode, because, Matthew and Luke both, copy from Mark, this episode is reported both in Matthew and in Luke in about the same way. It is not reported in the Gospel of John. John did not copy from the book of Mark at all. However, we have discovered another gospel called the Eggerton Gospel. It was just a few pages that we found out in the desert. And what it is a gospel which appears to be completely independent of any gospel that's in the Bible. But it also reports this particular episode, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in parallel columns. I'm going to put the Gospel of Mark and how the Gospel of Mark talks about this episode. And I'm going to put the Eggerton Gospel, right? And you'll see very clearly in the way the difference between the two evangelists, how they tell this story, it's really fascinating. So let's take a look at it over on the chalkboard. So I've color-coded this. The parts in white are the parts that are kind of the same between Mark and Eggerton. The parts that are in color are the ones that are different, whereas where either Mark has something that Eggerton doesn't or vice versa, right? So let's look at the first one here, right? So the first one is, the leper comes up to Jesus. This is about the same in Mark and Eggerton. What Jesus does, though, and how he reacts is quite different. In Mark, Jesus is moved with anger. Okay, now let me just briefly say, your version of the Bible probably says that Jesus was moved with pity. But the earliest and best manuscripts that we have of the Gospel of Mark say that Jesus was angry here. You get the impression that Jesus was just furious when he did this. Okay, so moved with anger, Jesus stretches out his hand and touches the leper. Notice, in the Gospel of Eggerton, Jesus does not touch this leper. Why is that? Well, keep that in mind. Let's go on to the next part here. All right. Now, in Mark, what's the difference between Mark and Eggerton here? And Mark says, and he sternly charged him, see that you say nothing to anyone. It's the Marcan secret. The Marcan secret is completely absent in the Eggerton Gospel. The Eggerton Gospel does not say anything at all about this. It's just something that Mark says. Right? But the Eggerton Gospel does have something that Mark doesn't have. Look at this green text here at the end here. And sin no more. So you get the sense in the Eggerton Gospel that Jesus really buys into this Leviticus mindset. Okay? The leper had it coming. He did some sinning, and Jesus cured him. And Jesus says, and sin no more, which means, you were a sinner. In Mark, there's nothing like that. There's no emphasis on the leper as having done sin at all. So you can see here that even though there's very few differences between these two Gospels, it's really amazing how much different the whole story is symbolically. So we see that the Eggerton Gospel, is missing a couple of things that the Gospel of Mark has. First one is this Marcan secret. It's a big secret, That's probably why Jesus is furious here at the leper, because he knows the leper's going to go blow his cover, right? But Jesus cures him anyways. And he says, don't tell anybody, but he does anyways. This probably makes Jesus a little bit mad. So that's probably why he's portrayed as being furious, The second thing, though, is very interesting, In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus has no trouble saying, I'm not following your stinking book of Leviticus. This is new times. This is the kingdom of God. New times, we need new laws. Now, why is this? Let's reason forward a little bit from the apocalyptic mindset. Remember, the apocalyptic mindset says that, the reason things are so bad now is the bad guys are in charge. But when the kingdom of God comes, right, the powers that be, the people who are on the inside are going to be removed. The people who are on the outside are going to be brought in. Now, who's on the outside, right? We have the demon-possessed, right? We have the lepers, In the Gospel of Mark, leprosy, far from being a sign of sinfulness or this kind of stuff, is a sign that you are chosen of God, is a sign that you are the kind of person that Jesus is reaching out to and touching. I think it's a very powerful image. And Jesus came to take the marginalized of society, the oppressed, the lepers, the women. We'll talk more about the women later. Into the fold, bring them in. The outsiders are going to become the insiders, and that's what the kingdom of God is about. So stay tuned till next week, and in the meantime, say nuts to the book of Leviticus. See you later.